This is the iPhone 16 Plus, and I've had it since it launched about 3 months ago. And in this episode, I want to share with you my thoughts about why this phone is pretty underrated for the year of 2024. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Today we're going to take a look at this 16 Plus. I covered this briefly in a segment in my best phones of the year as the best underrated phone of the year. Now, first of all us tech fans out there are going to say, what are you talking about, bro? 60 hertz, goodbye, automatic disqualification. You have a 60 hertz panel on here. I don't even entertain that phone. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is that you're getting a phone that's 90% of what you're going to experience using something like a 15 Pro Max or a 16 Pro Max in terms of, just having that iPhone software, big screen, nice body, great cameras. The overall experience is like 90% there on this phone to the more premium options. And honestly, while it's not great, 60 hertz is not horrible here on iOS because iOS is a smooth software that runs great either way. Yes, animations aren't going to be as smooth and fast as some of those 120 hertz phones out there, including Apple's own ProMotion devices, but it's hard to distinguish it. It really is once you get used to this phone after a few days. One of the reasons it's underrated is because of the chipset in here. We have the A18 chipset. Finally, we having like an iPhone 13 year, but people are tending to overlook that, where we have like the premium chip even in the base model iPhones. We also have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which pushes us to the same as like the more premium iPhone. In addition to that, dynamic island, just like the more premium iPhones. In addition, we do have ourselves the thin bezels, but not quite as thin as some of the newer Pro series. They are still quite thin and maybe even thinner than some of the older iPhones. In addition to that, we also have ourselves a really, really nice, large and bright screen that reaches the same brightness as the Pros. So this phone right here technically is still a top tier phone. And just because it doesn't have one spec, it doesn't make it not a great phone. That would be like if you were shopping for a car with a great brand that has great support and great service and reliability. But you're saying because it doesn't have one extra feature, like, for example, heated seats or something, or it doesn't have one extra feature like LED headlights and it has the halogens, that means the whole car is crap. Like, no, you don't say that. But when it comes to the phones, you say that about one feature. I've complained about it myself that they should upgrade it, but that doesn't mean that this phone is horrible, or else I would have never bought the dang thing right here. So yeah, speed optimization, very good. In addition, it has enough power now to run things like image generation, chat GPT integration, the new Siri. So all of it's here. It's a premium experience, even if it's not going to be the top screen hardware on here. So 3 months later, I'm very happy to recommend this to anybody who doesn't care about every little speck on the planet, especially the one with the display. And if you're a busy person running around getting things done in your life, I'm sure you're not sitting here, oh man, is it not slightly smoother than the other phone? So yeah, it really depends on the person. It really does. So when it comes to battery life, this phone actually has a larger battery than the older iPhone 15 Plus. So it's actually a good deal when it comes to the battery life here on the iPhone 16 Plus. You're getting bigger and longer lasting battery with a more efficient chipset. So 3 months later, my thoughts on this are you should definitely consider this one if you're looking for something cheaper than a Max, but still long lasting battery life. And I mean, even longer than the base models and the smaller models. That's a really good point to pick this one up. It also lasts better than like a 14 Pro Max. So if you're looking like, oh, well, maybe I can get a used Pro. Nope, this lasts longer than that. And it also lasts longer than a 15 Plus, which was also pretty good. 14 Plus was also decent, but this one has a bigger battery, so it just lasts longer. And we're probably going to go to the Air next year. We might not see the Plus next year, but this battery life is it's pretty good. It's a full day and a little bit. Now, my 16 Pro Max is like a full day and half the day of the next day. So it's like 1.5 days. This is why I would say it'd be like 1.25 days, if that makes sense. So like one day and most of the morning. My 16 Pro Max is like one day and then till like the evening of the next day, like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. that I need the charger for sure. So this is like not quite max level, but it's really good. So 3 months later, when it comes to the camera, I would say 3 months later, I definitely would buy this phone again. when it comes to the camera. And I didn't click that strong enough for it to trigger. You do have the camera control button, which you're going to find on the Pro models, but it's not that. It's that the base models now have the macro mode, which on Apple devices is really good. It's very easy to kind of just transition from the main camera over into the macro. You can also quickly turn that off, quickly turn it back on, and be on your way. So definitely, I really like this macro. That's a really nice upgrade. In addition, now that we have 10 times zoom versus before we had 5x on some of the older models, the 10 times is good. We had that on the plus of 15 model as well. But video is strong. We don't have raw modes, but I don't think we need them, mostly because the way you use iPhone a lot of the time is just to take really simple video, and this still produces, my finger got in the way, this still produces high level results. I don't think most people are going to be using the 4K at 120 found on the Pro models, so that's definitely probably not a big deal. And overall, I just like that I have top tier video and photo on the non-Pro model. It's just really a nice thing here. So this is another area it's kind of underrated. Now the front-facing camera is kind of the same it's been for years, 12 megapixels. So I wish they would upgrade this across the board. This is not overly impressive. It's pretty much the same. So this can get improved. When it comes to the display, I don't really love Dynamic Island on pretty much any phone because it's just like a big blotch there on the screen. But it's still useful for some people, and now we're seeing some Android phones doing this pill shape and the now bar on the Samsung devices. So it's kind of they're kind of taking some of those features there. But you'll see that the iPhone here does have, the 16 Plus does have a little bit more of a prominent bezel. If you do want to not see that as much, I recommend getting the black phone because this teal right here definitely showcases the bezel a little bit more. But this is my favorite color this year. I think it's definitely a nice looking, unique color for iPhone. We don't really see this often. It's kind of greenish teal, very nice color. But also, if we scroll down here, you'll see plenty of width, plenty of brightness, plenty of sharpness. Although there are phones that are much higher pixel density than this phone. So if you want a 4K panel, this is not going to be that. If you want a 500 plus pixels per inch, that's not going to be this. Neither is the 16 Pro Max. Overall, I got to say, I wish that this phone, just like the Pro Max, would support split screen, but just like the Pro Max, it doesn't support split screen. So we really need to see split screen on the future Plus and the future Pro Max models, whether they get rid of this or not, still through a software update. We still need to see split screen. There's no way to split the panel. So this single tasking on a large screen is just kind of boring. I want to see different abilities to take advantage of the screen. Other than that, plenty bright, plenty sharp, great viewing angles, great contrast, although pretty reflective. It's not going to be a super anti-reflective panel. You might have to get a screen protector if you want those properties, like an anti-reflective screen protector. The next one is software updates. Great beta program here on the iOS platform. You have 18.3 beta already available here. You can also use the official software, and they make it easier than ever now to go ahead and try these out and kind of get an experience of the new software. So it really is fantastic update support. And this is why even with a 60 hertz panel, the 16 Plus can still sell well. The ecosystem tied to it, iMessage, and the continuous software support. There are phones out there that might have a better spec, might have better screens, but they don't have the polish and they don't have the support of the iPhone 16 Plus, which is why people will still go out and spend their cash on a 60 hertz panel over here. And I go like this because not everybody cares about a 60 hertz panel. This is still a premium phone with every other spec under the sun that still can satisfy a lot of users just because they like the software that comes with the phone. That would be I even think certain people would still buy a Samsung phone with a 60 hertz panel if it had all the top level Galaxy features. If it was cheaper though, probably $499 or $399, they probably would still buy it if it had all the features. But luckily we don't have that, so I'm not recommending them do that. I'm just saying you get the point. You get why people will still pick this up. So iOS features are great. We also have all the new iOS customization features here in 18. So if I go over here, customize, you'll see I can tint those icons. I can move it around and change the colors. I can make them large. I could also make them small. And then in addition to that, they do have pretty polished widgets, which is something you don't see on all Android phones. You do see widget support there, but I feel like the way they look is a little more polished on here. In addition to that, this phone also gets all of the same AI features that the Pro Max gets. So that's another software selling point, I would say. So when it comes to the build quality, after a few months, I gotta say, I really like this clean aluminum look to this phone. It's clean. Vertical camera, we're not horizontal, so it doesn't look out of place with this horizontal look like the older iPhones. Clean edges, no fingerprints being picked up. This phone is extraordinarily clean. Like, it just doesn't look dirty whatsoever. And if it does get a little bit dirty, you can easily wipe it off. So if you're one of those OCD people who like a very clean phone, I think you'll like any of base model 16 series. Even the 16 Pros don't get that dirty, but they do show a little bit more fingerprints. These are just really, really clean phones. And it holds up pretty well in terms of scratch and durability. But although you still want to put a case on any phone that's going to cost you $1,000 like this. This also has better 5G connectivity than ever before if you pick one of these phones up, just because they do have the new Qualcomm X75 modems in here, and I found that to be good. A few months later, what I'm finding is that when I'm like in these areas where I would typically not get signal before, I'm starting to maintain maybe 1 or 2 bars better than before, so its overall connectivity strength got stronger. Day to day, the user experience of this phone feels light. It feels light and large, like a large, lightweight premium iPhone. And honestly, I don't think about its lack of promotion until I compare it in a video. That's not an excuse. I do think they should upgrade it as a future upgrade, but it doesn't mean that this is not a good phone for people to pick up. So that's kind of like the everyday usability things I notice about it. I also noticed that I like how I'm getting nearly a 15 Pro Max level experience for less money this year. So it's a really great underrated option, I feel like, a few months later in its everyday usability. I actually found myself trying to get adapted to using the camera control, and I never really did. However, I do like the action button, which is an improvement over the 15 Plus, which did you'll have to go over here and click right here to silence, or make that a silent switch right there in the action button settings. But holding this all the way down will bring up the new visual intelligence features, which can kind of like take pictures and like tell you what's happening with what you're taking a picture of and what you're looking at. So really good for, learning about locations you're at or products you're looking at. You don't know what they're about, or you're trying to see a QR code, anything. There's a lot of things that visual intelligence can do for you. So that's kind of like the everyday usability, and it's a pretty satisfying experience. It never felt cheap to me. That's everyday experience. It never felt like I'm missing too much. I feel like I'm in a top level phone, even if it's a little bit boring. It's iPhones have kind of gotten so good they can feel boring sometimes, but definitely feels like a top level experience. Another thing that's kind of like not talked about a lot with this phone is the heat management. A few months later, I found it to be great. It's just like the Maxes. They've made this one not have heat issues either. So this phone actually is cooler to the touch than the 15 Pro Max. And the same as like the 16 Pro Max, is cool to the touch. So this phone doesn't get too hot during use. Anytime you're really pushing it though, and you're charging the phone at the same time, you will get some heat. Like if I'm doing a whole video edit here, so let me allow full access. Let's go right here. If I was like editing this video in 4K and I was doing it for a while, I was doing a render, going back between apps, uploading a video on YouTube, and just kind of like doing a lot on the phone, it might get a little warm, like gaming. It might get a little warm, but it never got like toasty, like uncomfortably warm, which is something I would have mentioned. So it's been pretty good with heat management as well. Price and value. Well, value is kind of subjective to what you find valuable and your personal perspective in your life, and depending on how much you want to spend on a phone and how you feel about other phones. But I think the value comes from this being mostly what you're going to get in the latest and best phone, but just a little bit cut back, and you do get to save like $300-400 depending on which option you go with. And that is a substantial amount of cash if you're not like heavily invested into using the raw features that are coming on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, or you don't want that extra weight, this is a 6.7, that's a 6.9. So if you want that slightly smaller screen, this is the perfect size for you. Or you're even coming from an older Pro that never had the 120 hertz. This could be a great option for you if it's just not in your budget to go to that over $1,200+ iPhone. This is a decent deal that people just overlook because of a one feature. Seriously, that's the main reason they're overlooking it, I feel like, is because of the feature. I also feel like Apple built their company or their iPhone series on like always being the best of the best iPhone is the one that's popular, because you used to only have one iPhone per year. So nowadays, the ones that aren't at the top level are usually not ever looked at as the most popular, because people are looking at it at like
want the best iPhone. You know what I'm saying? So that's why this one gets a little bit overlooked. So at the end of the day, this phone has good accessibility features as well. Has DisplayPort, although you don't have good transfer speeds compared to the Pros, they're not as fast as USB 2. So definitely not as quick, but it isn't Lightning. At least it's USB-C. No headphone jack, no SIM card tray here in the US, so you do need to use eSIM, but pretty loud speakers. And wrapping it up in conclusion, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give this one about a 7.5 or an 8. It's up there. It's not going to get a 9 or a 10 because it's not Pro Max level, but it's pretty close. This would be like if we were looking at cars and there was like a less trim level, this would be still a really nice version, but just a little bit lower trim. That's this one. And yeah, it's pretty good. I don't think it'll resell as well because it's not the Max. I also don't think it'll be hard to find this on a deal when people are getting rid of them, because you probably could find these secondhand for a couple $100 cheaper already. So the iPhone 16 Plus, to me, 3 months later, it's a thumbs up. It's pretty underrated, I think. It's the best Plus model yet. And I like that it has the latest chip. I like that it has better cameras, macro mode. And honestly, I could get by with just using this phone easily. Most people can. I'll catch you on the next episode. Let me know your thoughts if you agree or disagree. And I look forward to seeing you in the next coming videos. Nick here. Be sure to be well. And peace.